Hi, nice to see you. So we've been talking about the idea of two islands in a boat, and we've put this little diagram on the board. Here's our wee island and our boat, and these are palm trees, by the way. And we've been talking about the idea that we might choose to leave some version of ourselves or some situation that's in our lives or some problem that's been harassing us because the effects of it don't fit somehow with who it is that we're wanting to be, or don't fit with our vision for our community, or something of that nature. And so we might move towards some sort of preferred sense of self, or some preferred problem-free or less problem existence, or something which is good for our community. And I want to just say a moment about how we might move from here to here, how we might move the conversation from a problem-centered conversation to a preferred-centered conversation. And one way to do that is through the third and fourth questions in this statement of position map 1, or this first island. You remember the third question that we asked was, what's your position on these effects, the effects of the problem in your life? And if a person says, well, no, I'm not for that, I'm for something else, and you might say, well, why are you for something else? And at that moment, the person begins to argue for some preferred state, something else. So that's one way to begin this conversation. Another way to begin this conversation is to wonder, have there been any times in your life when this problem could have had more influence in your life, but somehow or other you pushed it back, or you took some action which reduced its effect or something? Because that speaks to a sense of, I want things to be different. What were you trying to achieve at those times? Speaks to this notion of second island. So we can ask people, again, we might ask something like like that famous old miracle question: if you woke up tomorrow and everything was as you were hoping for it to be, what would you notice? What would be different? And again, that produces the beginnings of a description of what this island is. So this statement of position map 2, or the second island conversation, is exactly the same as the first, but it centres itself on the preferred. So we'd have a conversation about, what is it that you're hoping for? How would we know we were there? What would be different to now? And as we're talking that conversation, we can begin to ask the same question as over here. If you were to name what it is that you're aiming for, what would you call it? And again, we'd be negotiating that sense of, what would it be called?
Can I just ask a question on that, Donald? Because that would seem quite important. For example, if anxiety was over here, and it was me, I'd probably be inclined to say, this island is no anxiety. And yet, I may be setting myself up with something that's unattainable, or, so how do you ensure that the naming over here is something that's going to...
that becomes possible?
It's in the realm of possibility.
So what I'd be interested in is moving from no anxiety towards, so if you were in the presence of no anxiety, what would be different? What would you be experiencing? Right. I'd be wanting to move towards a name that was somehow in the, not the positive register, but the, what is that? If it's not a not thing, it's a is thing.
Right.
Whatever that.
So rather than just negating this one, we're opening up some preferred,
some real possibility,
quality of life of some kind.
In the presence of no anxiety, what would you find yourself doing? How would you be living? And that would be the name. Out of that would come the name.
Yep, that's helpful.
So some sense of name of whatever this island is. It might be peaceful parenting. It might be, if this was excessive use of drugs or something, over here it might be clear-headedness or something. And in the presence of clear-headedness or a different model of parenting, or whatever it is that we ended up naming it, some other version of play than gambling, we could begin to look at what effects, if you were living in that situation, what effects would that have for you? And exactly the same as here. What effects would it have for you physically? What effects would it have for you mentally? What effects would it have for you relationally, spiritually? What would your future look like? What would your relationships look like? Questions like those. What sort of places would it make a difference in? How would you know that your marriage was different? What would it look like? Go down into detail a little bit. So again, we've got the notion of name, and we've got the notion of effects. And just as before, in this first conversation, in the second conversation, we could then stand back from that and say, as we look at the effects of this, is this something you would like for your life, or something that you wouldn't like for your life? we ask the person to take a position. And whatever it is that they say, and generally speaking, they find it attractive because they've been describing it as attractive,
Yep.
ask, why? Why do you find this attractive? And again, they just thicken up that sense of, this is why I want to live there.
Yep. So this might get to some values they hold, for example.
Yeah.
That are important.
Because
to
this
them.
is important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what I'm hoping for in my life.
Hopes, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the beginning of looking at the first island and the second island. And in a moment, I think we should just take a moment to look at how might we talk about the movement in between. But let's do that next time.